Guys, welcome back to another tier list video. Today I'm just going to do a quick tier list of all the characters and try to go through the reasoning and things like that for the new 6-item patch that came out in Pride a couple weeks ago. Now that I've had some time on the patch and things like that, I can actually feel like I can give a valid opinion and kind of explain the reasoning behind why certain characters are as good as they are right now. To start, we're just going to get right into it. Countess. Countess previously, I think she was around like A+ tier. I think she's a lot worse now. I think it's a little bit more of a late game oriented meta as well as a carry kind of meta. And Countess kind of struggles a little bit. Her clear got nerfed a little bit, and I think a lot of her items that she used to spike off of take a lot longer to come online because now she needs 2 or 3 items to actually really start doing what she needs to do. And then in the mid game, you're a lot weaker in terms of your actually ability to one-shot people, just due to the fact that things like carries and stuff like that and most characters in the game generally have a little bit more max HP now due to the 6-item patch increasing the base stats on most of the characters. So I think she moves down from like an A+ to more of a B tier, even in jungle. I think her mid and her solo are kind of unplayable right now. I do think her jungle is still semi-okay as long as you can get into the later stages of the game. You do have to poke a lot more. It's a lot harder to full commit, but I do think she is still playable in the jungle. Moving on to Crunch. Crunch, another character that was like A+ tier. I think he's actually pretty bad right now. I probably want to put him in C tier, I think, but I can't reasonably put him below Countess. I think they're both kind of subpar. I would probably not recommend playing Crunch like a ton right now. Jungle is probably his best role. His soloing does not feel good. A lot of his items got nerfed. A lot of the defensive stats on a lot of the bruiser items that used to give defense, things like Citadel and stuff like that he really likes, got nerfed a lot. Mutilator got nerfed a ton. Feels not that great. Elefrost, one of his best items, got nerfed a little bit. I think he just kind of dropped down a little bit, as well as the fact that it's a little bit harder for him to actually kill people and get snowballing a little bit, which does kind of not feel as good for him. His clear is also not as good as it was, whether that's an item combination or a stats nerf or a jungle minion differential. I'm not really sure, but he does seem to be clearing a little bit slower than some of the other characters that we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to them. So for now, I have him in the B tier. Dekker, probably the best support. I would be honestly really surprised if this character doesn't get nerfed within the next patch, just due to the fact of how strong she is in the lane. She does insane damage, benefits a lot from some of the new items, specifically the one that lowers her cooldowns by 15%. Very strong character, really good. Utilized a lot of the items. The extra gold income lets her come online faster and actually be kind of a damage threat even as a support. She can flex into the mid lane, and she's just really strong in the lane right now, as well as really strong out of the lane. Then we go to Drongo. Drongo was like S tier last patch. I think he's gone down a little bit. He doesn't utilize Stormbreaker as good as some of the other carries, and I think that's really important in terms of how strong a character is right now. I do think he's still very good. Silence Grenade's still one of the best abilities in the game, and he's still an ADC. So I'm going to put him in A+ tier right now, but I do think he's a little bit weaker than some of the other carries that we'll talk about later. Then we have Feng Mao. I'm actually going to remove this D tier. I don't think anybody is D tier unplayable, so I'm actually going to just remove that tier altogether. We do have Feng Mao. I think Feng Mao's pretty average right now. A lot of his items got nerfed, Mind Razor, Omen being the 2 big ones. Really kind of hurts his power spikes, and then late game, Mutilator being nerfed does hurt his late game carry potential. He's still very good, very, very fast farm character. You do have to go Malady now, so you might run into some mana issues if you do that. However, he is still very good and definitely worth picking up if you want to play him. A little bit harder to execute than some of the other characters that we'll get to, like Khaimera and things like that, but he is still very strong. A little bit weak early, does scale really well into the late game still, just requires you to be a little bit more mana efficient, as opposed to how he was when Mind Razor was in the game, or at least was better than what it is now. Then we have Gadget. Gadget was previously like a B tier pick. I think she's actually really good right now. I think A+ probably. She utilized a lot of the new items. She loves Noxia. She's okay with Soulbinder. It's a very late game oriented meta, very carry oriented meta. She's anti-engage. Tanks are shredding like no tomorrow. She can absolutely demolish tanks. She just does an insane amount of damage, and she's very hard to dive, especially for tanks. And she can actually kind of trade well with ADCs, provided you play around your kiting ability with your right click and your ultimate, as well as the root, the speed gate. So she's very good right now. not top tier, not S tier, I don't think, but she is very good and definitely worth picking up if you have not played her yet. Gideon, still arguably the best mid. I think he's probably second best mid right now in my opinion, but he is still insane. Definitely an S tier character. Another character that I wouldn't be surprised if they got nerfed in this next patch. He benefits greatly from things like Noxia and a lot more of these items that got into the game. He gets a lot more cooldown now with the extra item slot, and then he also comes online faster due to the extra gold that you get now, and he's just really strong. Definitely moved up with this patch. I think last patch he was probably like A plus. He was arguably S. Now I think he's definitively S, like not even close. He is absolutely insane on this patch. Definitely worth playing. If you don't play Gideon, put him into your pool immediately. Greystone, just average. He has decent clear. Fire Blossom got nerfed a little bit, which kind of hurts him a little bit, but Overlord is also really good, and there's some other items like Gaia Greaves that makes him a lot more valuable. So overall, I think he's like A tier. He does have some of the fastest clear in the game because you can pull the camp and then jump onto things and keep your passive stacks, which can actually allow you to out clear a lot of characters right now. So he's pretty strong in that regard, but he is still Greystone. You still have a weak gank due to the fact that you don't have hard CC, but he's okay. Not the greatest. He is a little bit weaker in solo now, I think, than he was just due to Fire Blossom nerf, but his jungle is still fantastic and definitely a solid jungler. Grux. Grux was previously like B tier, arguably C tier, in my opinion. Now he is definitely A plus. I think his jungle clear got buffed to no end. He's probably the fastest clearing jungler in the game right now. You kind of clear your 4 camp at like 240, which is like 10-15 seconds faster than most characters. So he's really fast in the jungle. Gaia Greaves, a fantastic item that got put into the game. That makes him a lot more viable. It's a little bit easier to chase people down and actually get a good engage on Grux, which was kind of his biggest issue. His lane is a little bit better due to him getting some damage buffs and things like that. So he's actually really strong right now in solo and in jungle. And he's arguably S tier. I haven't seen like enough of him to be S tier, and he still has the same issues that he has of it's a little bit easier to engage now with things like Gaia Greaves, but he still does have the problem of he has to engage a specific way, and without flash, it's a lot harder to do so. So he is a little bit like he's leaning towards that S tier, but it's hard to put him there with the inherent issues that he has within his kit. Moving on, we have Howitzer, probably the best mid laner right now in my opinion. He's a little insane with Soulbinder. It's very easy to proc on the Q. You can easily stack it, get to like 40-50 stacks, no problem. He benefits greatly from some of the crest changes, mainly Obelisk having haste on it now. Makes him a lot more healthy or strong in the mid game because he gets more cooldowns, so you're getting more abilities off, which makes your uptime and damage significantly higher. You're getting your ult more often. It's harder to lock you down in the lane because you can actually ult out and things like that. So I think he's probably the best mid laner right now, but you could argue Gideon over him. Either one really you can't go wrong with. Very strong character right now. And I actually cannot stand playing against him. He is insane right now, in my opinion. Kallari, nothing really changed on Kallari. She already liked Malady. Next got buffed technically. It got extra cooldown on it, so she's loving that. She's just the same thing as she's always been. A little bit weak in the early game in terms of clear potential, strong gank potential, very good late game scaler. Can actually kill ADCs, which is kind of like really important in this meta just due to the fact of how strong they are. So she's probably maybe A plus tier. But I'll put her in A tier for now, just due to the fact that she has a weak early game. And if you're up against something like a Grux or something like a Khaimera that has a strong early game, you can just get shut down before you get to play the game. But she's really good. None of her items really got changed. She didn't really like Omen. She didn't really like Mind Razor. They're not like core to her build. Malady's still just as good as it was. And then Next got buffed a little bit. So she's still really good. Definitely worth playing, especially if you're trying to 1v9 and kind of like carry games. I'll put her A plus tier just because I don't feel right putting her on the same tier as Feng Mao. I think she has a little bit more carry potential, although she is a little bit of the highest execution characters in the game. You have to be kind of good and know what you're doing when you play her, but definitely worth picking up if you haven't. Then we have Khaimera, very, very strong right now. Fantastic jungler, just insane, very easy to play, good clear, good damage, benefits a lot from things like Gaia Greaves that got put into the game. Just good character. Nothing too much to say about Khaimera. If you've played the game, you've played against a Khaimera in the past 2 weeks, you know why he's good. He does everything you need. He's tanky, does good damage, CC, Good early game, good late game, just solid. Kira. Kira's probably third best ADC, I want to say. She can benefit from either crit or Stormbreaker, like on hit builds. Very strong character. She has mobility, which is really strong. A little bit of a slow, good in lane. She can be flexed in mid, which is pretty solid right now, especially in this more carry-oriented meta. Just a good character. Nothing wrong with Kira. Can ult around walls, good in objectives, good late game. Just a good character. Belica, definitely a little bit weaker than she has been. Probably the weakest she's been since the game came out. More of like an A tier character right now. A lot of the characters that she doesn't like playing against are towards the more meta oriented characters, such as like Howitzer, Gideon. She struggles a little bit more against characters like that, and unfortunately, those are the meta. And then she also got a little bit weaker on this patch due to her not being able to utilize such hard power spikes as she was last patch. And then she kind of requires a little bit more items to actually be able to get to the point where she can actually one-shot somebody, which does kind of require her to be like 6 items. But if you do get to that point, she is still really good. Nothing bad really about her. She's just weaker than the other characters, unfortunately. Pretty balanced right now, I would say, and probably one of the most balanced characters in the game at the moment. Morigesh. She's just A tier. Very similar to kind of Belica. She struggles against the top mids right now, right? Like, you're not doing too much against a Gadget or a Howitzer or Gideon, really. You're kind of just sitting there in the lane. You're just trying to farm. If you do get late game, fantastic. You can one-shot somebody, but you do have to get late game. That is kind of your problem. She's a little bit better in the lane now. Her damage early game got buffed a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean the one actually got his damage like doubled, basically. So you actually have a decent trade now, but she is still a single target mage, which is unfortunately not exactly what you want from your mage in most games. You kind of want to be able to hit, big AoE abilities on people so that you can actually do heavy damage in team fights. But she can still one-shot somebody. You do get 4 or 5 items on her. She will just kind of one-tap somebody if she gets a mark. So she's solid now. Probably wouldn't recommend playing her just due to the fact that other mids are better, but she is still viable as always. Murdock, he's an ADC. That's pretty much it. ADC is left click. Pretty much every ADC other than like Revenant is A+ tier or better. They're insane right now. ADC is absolutely eaten on this patch. He can go crit, he can go Stormbreaker, he likes Lightning Hawk, things like that. Just really good item, really good character, really good itemization. Ultimate's fantastic. Same old Murdock as he's always been. Just very, very solid. Muriel, I think she goes down a little bit this patch. Characters are a little bit tankier now, so due to the extra HP, she's not as much of a lane bully as she was. And then she also gets blown up a lot more in the late game just due to the amount of extra DPS output that's in the game when she gets 6 items. So I think she goes down a little bit from where she was. Still viable, just not nearly as strong as she was. Narbash, absolutely insane character. The heals, unbelievable. His lane's a little bit weak, but that's okay. Once you hit like level 3, level 4, level 5, it's pretty hard for you to die in the lane. Level 6, you become absolutely dominant in the lane. You get extra mana regen on True Silver Bracelet, which makes it a little bit easier to go early. You do lose a little bit of tank stats, but that's okay. You can make up with that with things like Frost Guard that now have dual scaling of physical and magical defense. So he's very good. Definitely worth playing. Arguably the best support, probably second in my opinion in terms of you want to carry the game in most games, just because Dekker has a little bit more playmaking potential, whereas Narbash are kind of playing reactively and you're kind of playing around your team a little bit more. There are some new items that do make him very strong, so he is definitely, if you're a support main, definitely be playing some Narbash in your pool. Phase, a little bit weaker this patch, I think, in general. She's still Phase, very oppressive in the lane. Late game, not as OP as she was. I think she definitely got nerfed like a little bit, and some of the items that she really utilized, like Wellspring, got removed from the game. Another reason why Muriel is not nearly as high is just things like that being removed make them a lot more difficult to play. Those being probably the main reasons that they're not as high as the other supports, but still playable, still good in the lane. You have great setup, good peel if you're playing a duo queue, very good in duo queue situations. If you're solo queue, probably wouldn't recommend playing Phase as support, but you can always try and see what happens. Rampage, probably our first C tier character. He is kind of dog shit right now. I would not recommend playing Rampage. His clear is slow. Fire Blossom got nerfed, so you kind of get forced to go into Overlord. You You get blown up by ADCs. You're impossible to miss. All you really do is rock. Outside of the rock, you don't really have anything left. So you rock, and then you do nothing. You just kind of sit there, and you don't outclear anybody. You don't have a good fight. You don't really trade well in the 1v1. If you're caught in the jungle against like a Khaimera or something, he's just going to eat you alive. There's not really anything you could do as Rampage. You have a little bit of an early game spike when you hit level 6. You have good ganks, but then after that, you don't really do anything. Once level 8, 9 rolls around, you kind of start falling off, and you don't just fall off. You drop off. You no longer exist after level like 11 or 12. Once ADCs get Demolisher online, you are no longer a character. You might as well go split push because you're not existing in the game anymore if the ADC is at that team fight. So pretty bad. I would not recommend playing Rampage. Probably, I want to say the worst character in the game, but I can't consciously say that with the next character that we're going to talk about, which is Revenant. He got criminalized. Basically, he was already the worst ADC, and then they nerfed crit on a lot of items, and they nerfed a lot of the items that he liked. Vanquisher got nerfed a little bit. All of the crit items got moved down to 20% instead of 25%, so you don't spike as much on each item due to the fact that he gets power based on his crit chance. Every item having less crit chance makes him worse. You can't utilize Stormbreaker. You can't really utilize Sky Splitter like other ADCs. He's just really weak in that comparison. You have limited DPS due to the fact that you only have 4 auto attacks. He really just has nothing going for him right now, unfortunately. Everything just seems to be working against him, and for that reason, I think he is the worst character in the game. But Rampage is pretty damn close in terms of how weak they are right now, in my opinion. Next up, we have Riktor. Kind of A tier. I think he's gone down a little bit just due to the fact that he's a little bit less of a flex now. When you play Riktor, you're kind of basically playing him in support. His jungle is still like okay, but with Fire Blossom nerfed, it becomes a lot harder to clear. Same thing with solo lane. You become a lot worse in both of those roles due to some of the item changes. You're also a lot squishier now, so kind of playing him in more as a backline support is a little bit better. Just to kind of like peel for your ADC, the enemy solo laner dives in, you just ult the enemy solo laner so that your ADC can kill them. He's kind of better as a support right now. He is still strong in lane if you're hitting hooks. Very oppressive. If you're hitting every single hook, still S tier character. You just insta win the lane and you just kill anybody you hook. However, just due to the difficulty and the fact that you're kind of more limited now, I think I have him move down a little bit more towards the A tier. Serath, she's loving the Stormbreaker changes. Fantastic. She was kind of like anywhere from A+ to B depending on matchups. She's very matchup dependent, but she is still good. She's loving the Stormbreaker changes. The fact that you get extra stacks in the jungle now makes it a lot easier to stack, and you get it a lot earlier, which is really important for her clear as well as her damage potential. Sky Splitter getting lifesteal on it makes you a little bit healthier when you're clearing camps, which is really nice, as well as a little bit more consistent damage. She doesn't really get nerfed as hard from the bruiser items getting nerfed as much, things like Ella Frost and stuff like that, so she kind of goes up, and then she also doesn't have to worry about playing into any bad matchups really, like Steel jungle or like Riktor jungle that might be a little bit harder for her to deal with. She can actually benefit a lot easier now, especially with things like Crunch as well being taken out a little bit. The only character that I would really worry about playing Serath into is like Grux right now. Zarus can also be kind of a problem, but you do outscale him a little bit as the game goes on, so I wouldn't worry too much about that, but probably maybe avoid picking it into things like Grux. Even Khaimera can be kind of hard, but if you get 2 items online, you can actually outtrade the Khaimera in terms of DPS, provided you can actually immune the ultimate with your Q or jump over it. Sevarog was an S tier character. Now I think he's just A tier. Solo lane, pretty weak. Probably wouldn't play him in solo. He's still like okay in jungle. You have great ganks, and that makes him really valuable. You do fall off a little bit late game. You're not as much of a menace just due to how strong ADCs and casters are right now. Still okay. Don't pick the Khaimera. Don't pick it in the Grux. Other than that, you're probably chilling. He's just a slow scaler, and then you're just slow scaler and then an engage tool late game. That's kind of what you do. You just look for roots, you look for ultimates, and you just scale. You do kind of struggle going Tank Crest, though. Tank Crest is kind of bad right now, so in that regard, you are a little bit slower than you really want to be, just because you're not going to finish it till like 12, whereas most of their junglers are going to finish their crest around, 8 to 10 minutes. So you're going to be like already a couple minutes behind the 8 ball, and then on top of that, you're also playing Sev, so you really have to prioritize getting your stacks and hope that you can maybe snowball a couple of early kills off some ganks with the long range root or the ult into your team or something like that. So just make sure that you're playing around your stacks correctly and actually making sure that you're confirming a lot of your stacks. Shinbi, she kind of has the same issue as Countess. You're kind of a hyperform character, and until your late game, you don't really do anything. Your early game's not that great. You do farm well, but that's all you do. You just farm. You can't really do objectives. You can't do like Fang 2, things like that. Just kind of weak mid game. Late game's not amazing, but you do get really strong if you can get, things like Magnify, Oathkeeper, Obelisk. You get them start scaling a little bit. You get a few items online. You can walk up and auto attack somebody for 80% of their HP. So in that regard, she's still like solid late game, but you do have to get like 4 or 5 items online to really get to that point, which is a little bit difficult to do, especially in this jungle meta. As far as her off lane, I probably would just not play her off lane. I don't think it's particularly strong. You have 0 pressure and you lose to pretty much every character right now, unless you're against maybe like a Sevarog or something like that. But you kind of get outscaled by Sevarog anyways, so even if you're against a Sevarog, you might win a little bit in lane, but I think he would probably outscale you in the late game, and then you get absolutely blown up by ADC's late game, 2 tapped by a couple crits, and there's not much you can do about it as a Shinbi. Unfortunately, she kind of has an issue of not being able to engage unless you have flash, in which case you flash, auto-attack somebody, and then you try to one-shot them, and if you don't get the one-shot, you die, and then you do nothing. Pretty unfortunate character right now. I do think she just suffers from the lack of engage, very similar to Grux. She doesn't really benefit from Gaia Greaves, though, the same way that Grux does, and her damage is not as oppressive in the early game, and she's not able to snowball like she once was. So for that reason, I think I have her in the B tier currently. Moving on to Steel, always been one of the best characters in the game. Still really strong, one of the only tanks that's actually like a tank. So I think I'm going to put him in the A+ tier. He does flex 3 roles. I do think his solo and his jungle are a little weaker just due to the fact that things like Fire Blossom got nerfed a little bit. But he is still magical damage, which does make it, magical defense is not great right now. They did remove the cooldown from Crystalline, making it arguably not nearly as good as it was. The only thing with Steel that kind of like makes me want to put him into A tier is just due to the fact that there's more tenacity in the game now. Things like Bonesaw having tenacity, Gaia Greaves, things like this, Unbroken being a lot better now due to Crystalline being worse. It just makes it a little bit harder to get away with Steel, but he is still Steel. You do still have a lot of CC. The wall is fantastic. You're one of the only characters that can actually stop the enemy ADC from playing the game due to the fact that you can wall off their damage. So for that reason, I think he is still A+, and still probably one of the best tanks in the game if you want to go that route. He does flex 3 roles as well, which is also important. Being able to be flexible and kind of throw the enemy team off guard, especially if you're picking early, can be really nice. The Fae, she's good. I don't think she's OP or anything. I think she's A tier right now, maybe A+. She does really good DPS right now. She benefits a lot from the extra item slot, getting extra cooldown and things like that. Allows her ult more often and just kind of use her abilities more often. Doesn't really, nothing too crazy has changed for her. She's still good. I think I had her A+ last tier list. I think she's a little worse just due to how good the other mids got. I think a lot of the other mids got a lot better this patch. I don't think she's necessarily gotten worse. She's also gotten better, but she just hasn't gotten as good as the other characters have, unfortunately, in terms of strength from the extra item slot. Twinblast. Probably the second best ADC right now, I want to say. If not the best ADC. He is very good. Flexes mid, flexes duo, abuses Stormbreaker and Sky Splitter to no tomorrow. You can build him crit. The resolution's not amazing, but it's still okay. He did lose the ability-based build. It's kind of a lot harder to go the ability-based build, but the on-hit build still hits just as hard as it did, if not more. And he abuses that like nobody else due to the fact that he shoots twice as fast. Very good, very strong character, mobile, hard to lock down, good damage, good lane, good late game. Probably the best late game of any ADC almost, except for maybe Grim. Very, very strong character and very good. Then we have Zarus, probably the only S tier jungler we have on this list. Arguably the best character in the game right now. He's absolutely insane in jungle. His solo lane is still good. You're a bruiser. You benefit a lot from items like Gaia Greaves and things like that. Envy is a fantastic option. Good character. Not too much to say about Zarus. You cage people. You stack power. People die in the cage. You just become a menace and you one-tap people, and that's really it. You're safe, you have good early game, you have good late game, you scale infinitely. Just an insane character, very, very good in jungle and in solo. Sparrow, A lot of people think she's S tier. She's really not. People are just kind of bad at playing against her, and they don't really punish her a lot. I think she's A tier, probably A plus just because she's an ADC, but realistically, I think she is A tier, which is a big improvement from where she was. I do think she was probably like C tier, kind of like Revenant level, but she does abuse Stormbreaker a lot, and she is probably like A tier. She was bugged for a little bit, so maybe people think she's a little OP because she was bugged, but they did fix that recently in a little hotfix, so she is not nearly as OP as she was when she was bugged. Good character, good lane, strong late game. If she pops Eviscerator or her ultimate, just try to play corners around her so that you can avoid the ultimate. And other than that, just CC her, right? And get your tanks to go on her. She does shred, but so does every other ADC. That's really not a Sparrow issue. I think people kind of just disrespect her damage a little bit, or have been. But she is still an ADC. If she is allowed to auto attack and actually cast, she will do a lot of damage. So you have to stop her from doing that when you play against her. Then you also have to play around things like corners, just so that you can dodge the ultimate if she actually casts it. Moving on to Wraith. Wraith was an S tier character. I do think he's a little bit worse this patch, and by a little bit I mean I think he's almost in the C tier. I think he's pretty bad right now. I don't think he's great in ADC. I don't think he's great in mid. You lose Mind Razor, which is probably your best item, and then Crit also got nerfed. So now when you go to Vanquisher and Demolisher, you're only at 40% instead of 50, which does make a big difference in your actual DPS. You also lost Omen, another fantastic item that you wish you could have, but unfortunately you can't anymore. It's just not nearly as good due to the fact that your right click resets to like 1 second, 2 seconds. That you're not really getting any value from Omen anymore due to the fact that it's percentage based. So he's a lot worse now in my opinion, and then you lose the mana as well. He's not very good auto attack build. Resolution doesn't really help him too much, and he doesn't really benefit from going an actual ADC build, whether that is Stormbreaker and or just like a normal crit build like Vanquisher into like Sky Splitter or something like that. He doesn't really benefit from either of those. So for that reason, I think he is pretty bad, and I would probably avoid playing Wraith, especially with the fact that he's already high execution. His build does not help him at all in this area. Next up, we have Iggy. I think Iggy's actually really good this patch. I think he is probably, besides Gideon and Howitzer, he's probably the third best mid. I think I would put him probably over Gadget. He's very strong right now. Stacks Soulbinder fantastically. Scales really well. His damage is absolutely nuts. If you're allowed to get your ult off, you can just one-shot people. Tanks don't exist on this patch, so you kind of just cook everybody, especially your turrets. They finally fixed his turrets. His turrets weren't proccing item effects correctly. Now they are, so you can actually proc like Megacosm and things like that off your turrets very consistently, which actually has a big damage increase in terms of his overall potency. Very good character, very good lane, good late game, hard to dive. The only problem that this character really has is that you don't have like an insane amount of burst damage due to the fact that you're kind of more of a sustained character, but that's okay in most situations. The only thing that you might struggle against is if you're basically 1v1ing an ADC and you don't have ult to knock them up, you might struggle a little bit. But if they do get in range to actually hit the ult, that could be really good. You can kill them before they land from the knockup while they're stunned in the air. But other than that, you might struggle in that kind of regard. You're also your worst matchup. Wraith is a lot worse now, so it's a lot easier to play him without getting straight counterpicked. The only thing for Iggy that I would say is I'd probably avoid playing it into Howitzer specifically. That can be a really tough matchup, especially if you mess up in the lane and the Howitzer gets a little bit of a lead. But other than that, he really doesn't have any bad matchups anymore, and you can kind of play it into pretty much anything. And the stuff that would do good into him is no longer nearly as good. Then we have Kwang. He was S tier last patch. Now he's kind of just A tier. He's kind of like every other tank. They've just kind of gone down a little bit. It's more of a bruiser meta, which is why you still have characters like Zarus at the top. So he's just kind of weak. Not weak, but he's not OP anymore. He's just average. Okay jungle, okay solo. You have good CC, but you do get blown up pretty easily late game. You have a strong mid game though, which a lot of the characters on this list don't exactly have a strong mid game, especially on the tank side, things like Sevarog and stuff like that. Not fantastic in the mid game. He is still good. He also does benefit from the fact that he can still build Flux Matrix, which will help not only you and your mid laner. It is one of the only magical defense items that actually has cooldown on it, which is really important with the crystalline nerf that came through with the last patch. So he's just all right. Nothing too crazy. Fire Blossom did get nerfed, which does hurt him a little bit, but you can always go something else. Magnify being put into the game the way that it is with the change to it does make him also able to actually get a little bit of pen now, which is pretty nice. So he's like A tier. If you want to play Kwang, but he's not he's nothing amazing, unfortunately. Then we have Argus. Argus is not good right now. Probably the weakest since he came out, which isn't really that hard to beat. He is pretty bad. He's kind of weak in lane. His late game's not great due to the fact that you're kind of like a sustained damage character. Your 3 doesn't do enough damage to actually do enough damage to kill anybody, so you kind of don't really do anything, and then your burst with your 1 and your ultimate doesn't really do as much as it was. You're not able to one-shot anymore. Your lane pressure is a lot weaker. You do get a little bit of buff on a Zerkor, but that's the only real buff that he's gotten, and everything else it just seems to be nerfs on top of nerfs. So he's pretty weak right now. I do think he's playable in support though, so I'm actually going to put him in A tier. But as far as mid lane goes, he's probably C tier. I would not recommend playing him in mid. But as far as support goes, he's probably like A+. So for now, I'm going to put him in A tier. But I do think I would not play him in mid, and I would exclusively play him as support right now, unless something changes within the next patch. Then we have Grim. I don't believe he was on the tier list that I did last time. But for now, I think he is S tier. I think he's the second best ADC in the game. I think he is absolutely nuts. He's so good you don't even have to build pen on him. You just go Stormbreaker, Tainted, and you just absolutely pump damage. You just kill everybody. There's nothing anybody can do about it. You do an insane amount of damage. You're safe. They made his hitbox smaller. They buffed his damage. Your ult is great. You can actually kill ADCs without even getting within auto attack range. Your poke is fantastic. You have people. You have a slow, so you can run down people in the lane. If you're playing with like a Dekker or a Narbash, you get like a little thunk on somebody, and you can just walk somebody all the way down the lane with your 2. Fantastic character. Very, very good right now. If you haven't been playing Grim or you haven't played Grim on this patch, pick him up. He is very good and definitely worth playing right now. Magical defense also a lot worse. Magical defense being nerfed, specifically Crystalline, which was probably his hardest counter last patch. It's a lot harder to deal with a Grim, and again, he is so good you probably don't even need to build Costa in most games, just due to the fact that you do so much damage right now. Lastly, we have Aurora. She's not great. I don't think she's amazing. I'm going to put her A tier right now. I think her solo lane is okay. She's okay at trading. She's hard to kill, but she doesn't really do like a ton. She kind of suffers from a little bit of the Grux issue, which is late game. You kind of don't really have an engage tool unless you have flash. So you can flash ult. If you don't have flash ult, it's a lot harder to actually get like your combo off. And then I think her jungle is pretty mid. I don't think your ganks are great unless you're coming from the enemy team's jungle, which is a little bit easier said than done. She does have great objective clear though, so that's one benefit that she does have. You will absolutely melt Fangtooth and things like that. But she does seem to be a little bit awkward in terms of the way that she plays, and I just don't think she's like anything crazy right now. I'm not like a super big fan of having her on my team, and I don't really feel threatened by her when she's on the other team. It could just be player diff, but I feel like I've played enough against her now to kind of have a good grasp on her, and I think she is kind of like A tier right now. I don't think she's anything crazy. She's definitely not all that in a bag of potato chips, but she is playable, and I think she's okay. Could be a lot worse. It could be a Rampage on your team, so I guess I can't complain really. But for now, I think I have her in the A tier. Could go up or down with more playtime, and maybe somebody figures out like a good build or something, or that maybe they give her some quality of life where she doesn't get delayed on the dash or something like that, which could be a big benefit to her. But for now, that's kind of all for this tier list. That's pretty much I don't really have any closing regards. I don't think anything is too crazy. If you have any different opinions, please let me know in the comments, or like why. Give me your reasoning in the games that you've played. Maybe you figure out like a good build. Maybe you're a crunch main and you have like a good crunch build that I haven't tried, or you think I haven't tried. Feel free to let me know, and maybe I could change my opinion. But for now, this is kind of where I rank most characters in the game. Definitely an ADC in like a mid laner heavy meta right now. So if you're maining those roles, you're having a good time. If you're maining something like solo, probably not doing as well right now, but hopefully the next patch balances things out, right? And then, we'll see what they do with that. It is the first patch on 6 items, so there's bound to be some outliers that are stronger than others, and you just have to give them time to balance that out. But thank you for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and that's all for today.